What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a fantastic day today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the other day, the Splitgate team went ahead and did something absolutely insane. Honestly, out of all the years of my experience with FPS titles, I've never seen a development team so open and so willing to work with their community to the point where they're going to take a core fundamental of the game and shift it around depending on how the community reacts to it. I gotta be real, it blows my mind. But of course, the other day, the Splitgate team pushed out a questionnaire for all of us to go ahead and answer, basically giving our input on what we think of the specialists within Splitgate 2. Even to the point of asking if we even want to see them within this game. So, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go over this questionnaire. I'm going to basically showcase my answers for each and every one, why I chose these answers. And, of course, I highly encourage you guys to do so as well. Please, I am begging you, go to this questionnaire. I'll have a link to it down in the description of this video. Everybody's opinions matter. It doesn't matter if you have, hundreds of hours, if you only have, 20 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours. That doesn't matter. Everybody's opinion is valid here, and I hope each and every one of you guys take a little bit of time, like 2 to 3 minutes tops, to fill this whole thing out. But, ladies and gentlemen, before going dive deep, if you guys are interested in more content just like this, don't forget subscribing at that bell. I post here daily at 8 morning Eastern Time. Splitgate, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Ark Raiders. You best believe you'll see it all here. And last but not least, if you guys are interested in my live streams, I stream Monday through Saturday over on Twitch, starting between 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, if you guys are interested, I got to link that channel down in the description of this video. All right, let's just go ahead and dive right on in. The first question here: how much did you play the original Splitgate 1? Personally, I played it occasionally, and of course the other answer was never played, tried it once or twice, played regularly, and played a ton. I played it a ton when the game first went ahead and dropped. But after, of course, a couple to a few months, I kind of fell out of love. Not really fell out of love, but as the developers stated themselves, Splitgate 1 was more so of a concept, and they needed to take that image, that, that passion they had for this concept, and basically expand upon it to what Splitgate 2 currently is right now. And I gotta be real with you guys, Splitgate 2 deserves all the playtime in the world if you personally ask me. But let's go ahead and move on to the second question here. It says, how much have you played Splitgate 2 so far? Personally, I almost have 200 hours, ladies and gentlemen. I know people are going to say, God, touch some grass, man. Trust me, I do touch grass 110%, but I'm at like 190 or something hours. So I definitely grinded out a decent amount. Number 3, which game modes do you play most often? Personally, I play Arena, but I gotta be honest, Battle Royale is not that shabby. But to be completely real here, I don't play them both evenly. I definitely play 4v4 and Onslaught tremendously more than the Battle Royale experience. Number 4, are you aware that the game has 3 playable factions, Zabrask, Arrows, and Meridian? Yes, I mean, my goodness. These questions are legit, though, because if we're going to be honest here, there are some people who just won't take the initiative to look around the game. But, I mean, this is the most basic of basic knowledge that you can gain from just searching around and looking at the classes. But as I stated, there's some people out there who won't take those steps and say the game is bland or boring without even diving deep and seeing what the game is all about. So I can understand why this question is even a thing. But again, I answered yes. And then moving on to number 5 here. Do you understand what makes each faction different, e.g. weapons, abilities, playstyle? And I said yes, very clearly. Now, again, everybody might have a different opinion on this one. But for me personally, I mean, like I said, just looking at the game itself, looking at the factions, looking at what they have, I think it's very clear that Arrows is made for speed, Zabrask is made for getting on the OBJ and playing some solid defense, and then obviously Meridian is the class that's supposed to be for recon. You get a recon throwdown dart that, scans the area. You have the wall hacks. You get the time dome so you can give yourself a little bit of speed on the OBJ after you do such a thing, so on and so forth. I personally can see them very clearly. Number 6 here. Which faction do you play the most? And I went ahead and voted for I don't have a preference, or I play all 3 equally. And that's just simply the truth. Any single time that I load into a game, I like to fill in the slots. Now, maybe I would hyper-prioritize something depending on the mood I'm in. Maybe I want to move around fast, I'll pick Arrows. Maybe I want to be more OBJ-focused, I'll pick Zabrask, so on and so forth. But in all reality, from my personal playstyle, like I said, I fill in the blank. So whatever person doesn't play something specific in 4v4, I'll go ahead and hit that spot up. Number 7 here. How often do you pick your faction based on their active ability? Hypersight, Wall, and Rush. I said rarely, and that's the truth as well. And again, you could choose between always, often, sometimes, never, so on and so forth. But it's very rare when I pick my faction based off of the ability and the ability only. Again, like I said, I usually fill in the slots where, where it's needed. And when I go into Onslaught, 8v8v8, where you don't really necessarily have to fill in the slots, you could just pick whatever you want, I find all of the factions very, very enjoyable. I mean, if you just go onto my streams, I pretty much play them all equally across the board. I love all the weapons. I think the devs did a phenomenal job balancing them out. And all of their abilities feel like I can, have fun with the game while using them. So, of course, I went ahead and picked rarely. Number 8 here. How often do you pick your faction based on their weapon loadout? Once again, rarely. Like I said, when I pick my faction, it really does come down to, like I said, in 4v4, fill in the blank, but let's start hyper-focusing 8v8v8, where it doesn't matter, right? When it comes down to it and I don't have to worry about filling in the blank, I genuinely don't pick my factions, based off of any of the stuff, their abilities, their weapons. I love using everything in the game. I mean, if I didn't use everything in the game, I would be bored in 5 seconds. It's like the same thing with like Call of Duty or Battlefield or any game like that where, they just pick one weapon, they grind with the same weapon, and then they say they're bored because, I can't blame them. How could you not be bored using the same thing every single time? So, yeah, I very rarely choose my faction based off of weapons or, the ability. I just kind of use it all because it's all very fun. I like to mess around with the SMGs, ARs. I like messing around with the carbines. And I will say that I do not pick the factions based off of the weapons because all of them are pretty well balanced. I love literally every carbine for every faction, besides maybe the cadence a little bit for arrows, but it's been growing on me. All the burst rifles, love them all. All the assault rifles, love them all. All the SMGs, love them all. As long as you figure out the right attachment, setup, everything's very balanced. So again, very rarely do I pick a faction based on the gun because the guns are good across the board. And again, all the factions have every single weapon class. I have to give props one last time to the devs. Seriously, thank God you guys play your game. I mean, it's wild to see the difference between a game like COD where the developers don't play, and it's literally a set meta for 4 or 5 months after launch that they refuse to change. And then you move over to something like Splitgate 2, where the developers actually consistently play, and everything, you could tell, everything is nicely balanced because the developers have to play with it, and they have to deal with it. They go through all the stuff that we go through as players, and you can 1010% see. Moving on to number 9. If all weapons were available to all factions, no more faction-based weapon restrictions, how would that affect your gameplay experience? I went ahead and chose it would somewhat reduce my enjoyment. I gotta be real with you guys. I think that having weapons split between factions keeps the game refreshing. It does. If all the weapons were available to everybody, then a meta would 1010% be formed. And as I stated, yes, a lot of the gun classes are nicely balanced, but being able to pick your faction ability and the equipment that they come with, all these different factors to these, factions allow for that variety in gameplay, Yeah, the jackhammer for Sabrask is like one of the best bursts, but at the same time, not everybody wants to run around as Sabrask. Not everybody wants a drop shield. Not everybody wants that equipment. Some people like to play arrows, so they don't run the jackhammer, Things like that. You get what I'm saying here? The fact that everything is kind of separated between factions, I think adds to a much more well-balanced game. And if they were to go ahead and make all the weapons unrestricted, it would just cause everybody to use the same exact thing every single time they load into a match. So again, I picked it would somewhat reduce my enjoyment. Moving on to number 10 here. On a scale of 1 through 5, how much do factions add to the overall gameplay experience? 1, I hate them, 3 equals neutral, and 5 equals extremely valuable. I chose 4, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of the original Splitgate crowd is going to really, really, really hate this one. And I can understand why, because the charm of the original Splitgate is kind of like the charm of Halo, where everybody spawns in with the same stuff, there's no abilities, you're just going with your gun and you portal around and you catch some bodies. But the factions add in really extra layer to the overall gameplay flow, if you ask me personally, and I kind of actually enjoy that, if I'm going to be completely real. I think they add a lot of layers. Being able to pick whether you want wall hacks and having a time dome, or having a drop wall, maybe having a frag to get people off of the OBJ, or maybe even picking a mine to play defense, arrows if you want to go ahead and pick a shock, disc, so you can go ahead and shock the OBJ for your team to move in, or a portal so you can easily flank people or get, cheeky spots. Every single faction plays such a massive role in the game-to-game matches that if they were to go ahead and remove the factions, I think that extra oomph, that extra fun factor for me personally would disappear. And I know it's unpopular, I know people want it completely gone, but for me personally, I think it adds a very fun factor to the game, especially in the OBJ-based game modes. You know, in TDM, it's boring. It doesn't really matter. It's TDM. But in OBJ, when everybody is like I said, when you have a Sabrask, a Meridian, and an Arrows, and everybody's working together, and everybody's synchronizing nicely, and all the abilities are combined together, it's just, it really is, truthfully, a blast. Moving on to number 11, on a scale of 1 through 5, how much do the faction active abilities, Meridian Hypersight, Sabrask Wall, and Arrows Rush, add to the gameplay experience? I chose 3, although I might have even pushed up to 4, but the reason I chose 3 is that, again, as much as I want to push for, these things to stay in the game, I had to think really hard about this one. If all of these factions were removed, if you didn't have any abilities in the game, would I stop playing? And to truthfully answer that, no. The portals alone, the gunplay and the movement, are easily enough for me to be still hooked to Splitgate 2 no matter what decision these developers go ahead and make. But the reason I still stay on 3 is because of the fact that, as I stated, I believe the abilities add a nice shakeup to the overall gameplay experience. In one of the live streams, the CEO at 1047 went ahead and said that, they added these factions in because it just felt like a little extra oomph, right? A little extra content and some extra depth to the overall game, right? And I 1010% feel that, and I agree with that. It does add some extra depth, and it makes you think a bit about what you want to play and how you're going to go ahead and work together as a unit. But moving on to number 12 here, if we remove the entire faction system from the game, how would you feel? And I went ahead and chose it would somewhat reduce my enjoyment. Out of all the options I said, it would greatly reduce my enjoyment, somewhat. It wouldn't make much difference. It would somewhat improve my enjoyment, and it would greatly improve my enjoyment. The reason I chose it would somewhat reduce my enjoyment is because I think that this game from the ground up was built around the faction system. Genuinely. They definitely had this concept in their minds during the creation of Splitgate 2. And if there's one thing that I know about game design, when you have something that is a core fundamental that has been there since the ground up, it is very hard to remove it without it feeling like a chunk of the game is going away with it. As I stated before, I voted differently, saying, like 3, for example, on that previous question, because it's not going to kill my love for Splitgate 2. The portaling movement and gunplay will still be heavy. But when it comes down to 4v4, you could, like I said, you could feel it, you can sense it, the developer since day one around the maps, the gameplay, the movement, the flow. All of these aspects were still not revolved around factions, but factions were in the picture while they were creating all this stuff from the ground up. You can tell. And if they were to go ahead and remove it, it would somewhat reduce my enjoyment because I think it adds a nice twist. Not only is portaling around extremely fun, but also being able to know when and where to use your abilities and also how to use them alongside your teammates is such an extra fun learning curve to the game that I just find a lot of enjoyment in. And then here we are at number 13. How do you feel about the faction active abilities? Hypersight, Wall, and Rush. I said they're a core part of the gameplay. As I literally just stated in the previous question, these were built from the ground up to be in the game. Although some of them can be tweaked around, some of them can be changed, nerfed, buffed, I don't care. Especially like Hypersight, for example, the wall hacks. Some of these things should be adjusted. But at the end of the day, I think that they are indeed a core part of the gameplay. They were there from the beginning, the inception of Splitgate 2, and if they were to remove them, something would feel a little iffy, in my opinion. And then, of course, number 14, what would you prefer we do with the faction system? I said keep it as it is. Now, of course, the other, answers are simplify it, expand upon it, remove it entirely, and not sure. I've had a lot of people in my stream while I was doing this live, and again, thank you all for tuning in. If you want to tune into my stream today, I have a link to my Twitch channel down in the description of this video. But a lot of people in my stream, they chose expand upon it because they want them to add more factions into the game. But when I read this question, the way that I read it, and I'm going to read it again, what would you prefer we do with the faction system? I hope that they keep it. When I read this, I thought that they were asking the question of, should we keep them or should we remove them from the game? And I want them to keep it exactly how it is. I don't think that they should change anything too drastically, because if they add more depth to this overall system, I feel like it just won't be casual friendly at all. I just think simply having equipment, your overall ult, and then at the same time, having your weapon choices is perfect. It's a perfect balance. It's enough to make you think about your choices, but at the same time, not too overwhelming that it's just a complex system. But I do want to see them expand upon it and add more factions if that's what the community really wants. But I'll be real with you guys. I think 3 is perfect. I really do. I think 3 is a great amount. I think that all the abilities that we have right now are really solid. If a year down the road, the community is up in arms and they really genuinely want an extra faction to be introduced, I wouldn't be against that either, as long as the developers really think hard about the next faction being introduced, because they made it very clear that it's not on their plate. They don't really care too much about doing so, but if that's what the community wants, then so be it. Which worries me, because I don't want them to rush it into the game and put something that just makes absolutely no sense into the title. As I stated, everything in this game feels very nicely balanced, and you could tell that they have been there since the beginning of the inception of Splitgate 2, and because of that, the balance isn't too shabby. Yeah, like I said, we need to tweak things here and there, but overall, they all feel like they fit nicely. I don't want them to just say, oh, okay, the community really wants something, we had to push something out, and then they throw in a faction that is just like, meh. You know, it's like, okay, well, why are you here? What's the point? Why was this added? I just hope we don't get to that point, and they truly take their time if they are planning on adding anybody else into this game. But ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much all we have here for the Q&A. Pretty good one, I gotta be honest with you guys, and as I stated, this is insane if you ask me. The fact that these developers are even coming out here and allowing us to debate on a core function of the game is mental. Not even XDefiant did that. XDefiant had tons of great communication, but not even they went out and said, oh, you know, people don't like that you can have abilities in XDefiant. They don't like the specialists. They just want gun-on-gun gunplay. Let's go ahead and put a Q&A out there to see if we should keep it or remove it. No, they said deal with it, right? Yeah, they adjusted things here and there, but other than that, we had to keep what we had, right? Because it's a core fundamental. These developers, they're always so open and awesome with this community. It's one of the main reasons why I love them, I support them, and I can't wait to see the future of this game, because it seems that the community genuinely is at the heart of this title every step of the way. But, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like. If you hate it, leave a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. I post here daily at 8 morning Eastern Time. And, of course, if you guys are interested in any of my live streams, I stream Monday through Saturday over on Twitch, starting between 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, if you guys are interested, I'll link that channel down in the description of this video. But, as always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.